Hi Virgos, how are you? Happy August, and here is your 2017 reading for August. I hope you all had a good month in July. And yeah, let's get into what's going on with Virgos for this month. I'm beginning to learn a lot more about Virgos and sixth house stuff in general. And I have both of my parents are Virgos, and so I definitely I've spent a lot of time with some Virgos, and I'm definitely beginning to understand a little bit more like the sort of self-sacrificing and the healing in the self-sacrificing that occurs with Virgo or with like a lot of sixth house sort of activity. So there's a lot going on with you all this month, as there is with a lot of signs. But I was sort of thinking and sitting and reflecting before I started the video, and I just was asking, like, what messages do we have for Virgo? Like, what does Virgo need to know for this month? And like, what are the feelings? Like, what's kind of going on with Virgo? And I couldn't help but feel sort of pensive, and just kind of like there is, this thought, or there is something that I'm very deep in thought in, and it's almost like I feel like I'm in purgatory, or like I'm straddling in between two sort of, like I'm kind of stuck in a sense, or I feel like I'm, feeling like I'm definitely in purgatory, or feeling like, there's some sort of being held in suspension. That was kind of what came to mind. And that actually makes a lot of sense, because the lunar and the solar eclipse, they're both going to be happening in your 6th and 12th houses, right? And those two houses, the 6th house represents, our responsibility in the physical world, right? The sacrifices that we make in the physical world, the suffering that we must endure in the physical world, the self-discipline that we have in the physical world, like our responsibility to, our responsibility to our responsibilities. Like, how do we maintain our responsibilities financially, and to our health, to the health of other people? How are we of service to others? And it very much has to deal with the things like the routines, the regimens that we can actually physically tangibly manipulate and handle, and have control over. Whereas the 12th house is more so to do with the subconscious, right? It's the Pisces house. It's the subconscious. It's what we can't see. It's belief and faith that even if I don't have this regimen and this very disciplined way of doing things, things will get done. Things will happen as they need to, and in that way of happening as they need to, it's perfect as it is, right? Like, there's perfection in the imperfection. Whereas Virgo, the 6th house, is like, no, we actually can make things very perfect, and here's how it's going to get done. And actually recognizing how both sides of that do deal with healing and sacrifice, right? Self-sacrifice, right? In the 6th house, the self-sacrifice is in, I am disciplined, I get things done, and almost, and if you're not careful with that energy, like becoming the martyr, essentially, right? And playing that role of like, oh, woe is me, like this is all the work that I do, and who am I to think that I can even venture out and do things that don't have to do with me sacrificing, right, parts or aspects of myself, right? And even in the 12th house, that, in spiritual practice and in spiritual service, there is a sacrifice, right? Like, when we decide to consciously, to consciously walk on a spiritual path and have conscious spiritual practice in our lives, that is a sacrifice, right? Like, we're recognizing, we're recognizing the attachments that we may have that need to be sacrificed. We're recognizing the things that we do in our daily life that don't feed us spiritually, and sacrificing those things in order to fulfill or to kind of carry out healing, right? And so The lunar eclipse, which is happening on August 7th, is going to be, which is going to be in Aquarius, is going to be happening in your sixth house, right? So, and full moons being, endings, culminations, climaxes, things closing out, coming to an end. So the realization, and also with the lunar eclipse, right? Like the lunar eclipse being the illumination of the shadow self, that point in which we're coming into contact with, or things about our shadow self are being sort of revealed to us. And so with the sixth house, with the lunar eclipse in the sixth house, the possibilities of, recognizing a certain pattern or regimen or way of doing something that actually, that initially might have been healthy, or might have been, we all have to sacrifice, right? There is sacrifice, there is suffering in our existence. But there comes a point where it's like, now we're going overboard, right? And so maybe there is a certain pattern or behavior that you're realizing at first, this taking this job where I'm working in service to others seemed like a really great idea, but now my own health is like failing, right? Or my own health is not where it should be or where it was before, right? So the recognition that a pattern, a way of doing things in your sixth house is not working for you anymore. And it's actually causing suffering. It's causing you to suffer in a way that that is actually unnecessary, right? Like we don't need to constantly be suffering to learn, all of these lessons. And sometimes we can learn lessons through joy, and we can learn lessons through not sacrificing and through self-preservation. And then we have a solar eclipse in your 12th house, which is going to be, a new moon in Leo again. And the 12th house being the subconscious, our faith, our ability to believe, regardless of what's right in front of us, right? It's those things unseen, the things that we can't tangibly feel or pick up in our lives, but are very much there. And so the solar eclipse being also, tied to the new moon, which, generally they are, and a solar eclipse bringing about, new beginnings, new ways of seeing things, new patterns forming, and being in the 12th house, maybe a new revelation, a new way of relating to yourself psychologically, a new way of viewing the connection between the suffering in your sixth house and how that then induces suffering in your 12th house, right? Like, how is my suffering in my physical world actually creating my suffering in my subconscious psychological world? What's the connection between the two? Or how is my lack in faith, right, and my need for perfection in everything that I do in the sixth house actually creating suffering psychologically in my lack of faith and belief in the 12th house, right? How can I bring in new faith and new ways of believing so that I can kind of let up on this Virgoian tendency towards intense perfection and needing things to look a certain way and to be organized in a very specific way, which can drive you crazy mentally, right? It's the idea of insanity, that if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and wanting different results, thinking that you're going to get different results, then you're insane. Like, it doesn't work that way. So what are you doing in your sixth house that needs to be brought to an end in order to bring about a new way of being and existing in your 12th house, which, doesn't involve the insanity that perfection often, brings about in all of us. Not just in Virgos, right? Like, I know a lot of people who are perfectionists who aren't Virgos, right? So what is that? Like, how can we take that energy and transform it and transmute it into a better or a better sense of faith or belief, that things will happen as they need to. So that's what's going on with y'all astrologically for the moon, the dance that the moon is going to be doing this month, the lunar and the solar eclipse. So let's get into the reading. And I want to keep this reading more on the intuitive side of things. So first card out is the Queen of Wands. So this is, you know, the energy that this is kind of an overall energy, right? Queen of Wands. She's very warm. She's very friendly. She's very outgoing, very lavish. But I wouldn't want to fuck with her either. I wouldn't. This Queen of Wands is not. You know, if you're gonna step to her, have a know what you're talking about and be quick. Be very quick-witted. So that's kind of the energy. So feeling fiery, right? Like feeling fiery, feeling in control in a sense, right? That queen, she's sitting on that throne. So let's see what else is going on for Virgo. Oh, wow. Let's see what else. Yeah, I've been encountering a lot of people lately who are talking a lot about their Virgo aspects. I was having a conversation with a friend last night who was telling me about her, about her Virgo moon in her second house, and how she's wanting to kind of break out and fulfill, you know, the career of her dreams, but has this job where she helps special needs children and, you know, can't seem to allow herself to even fathom the idea of fulfilling her own passions in lieu of working with these kids. Because she's a healer, you know? And so that piece of self-sacrificing, you know, when does it actually become a detriment to you? You know? When do you want to allow yourself to actually feel the abundance and to feel the fulfillment, you know, in all areas of your life? Like when do you want to let this energy come in? When do you want this to stop being an idea, right? And when do you want to actually pursue, right, that 10th house, whatever it may be, that career or that identity or that breaking out on your own? When is it, you know, when do you want to actually reach for this? It's up to you. So started out with the Queen of Wands. Oh, first let me show you all the cards here. So we have an interesting spread going on. And here y'all are, the Hermit, you know, always forever on this quest of understanding and breaking things down, and you know, this Hermit has very little, right? He's sacrificed, he's given away many of his possessions, and he understands the beauty in doing that and stripping things down to the bare bones, right? So this is the spread. So we started out with the Queen of Wands. And the Queen of Wands, like I said before, being the first card that came out, kind of spoke to me as to where you all are sort of feeling right now. And definitely feeling, you know, possibly fiery, possibly, you know, warm and friendly and lighthearted, allowing, right, this summertime Leo friendliness to come in and just to kind of feeling a little bit playful, feeling playful, right? And I definitely see this. This is this King of Wands as another person who's around you, who maybe you're in a relationship with, or it could be a family member. It could represent your father, right? The King of Wands can also represent your issues regarding your father. The King of Wands, being a fire sign can be warm and friendly too. But if you notice, this king, his fist is kind of clenched, and his face does not feel very soft, right? So the King of Wands to me isn't, and really none of the kings for that matter, even the King of Cups, I don't really get a lot of softness. I don't really get a lot of, welcoming, friendly energy, right? Like because he's a fire sign that's incorporated in there, right? But is he more of a Leo or more of an Aries? I would probably say more of an Aries, right? More of like a gung-ho, I gotta get what's mine, who's standing in my way, kind of Mars type of energy. Whereas this to me feels very Leo-like, right? This Queen of Wands feels very warm and friendly and outgoing and courageous, and, is willing to go above and beyond for her friends and her companions. Not so much this King of Wands, right? This King of Wands will kind of ask you why I should go above and beyond for you before actually doing it. But I definitely see this representing a person. And once again, that person could be a fire sign, an Aries, Sag, or a Leo, who you've been dealing with romantically. And I say that because we have this Three of Swords right here, right? I can also see this as representing a father figure, or aspects of your father figure that, you are coming to terms with. And maybe, sometimes when we, when we pick out our romantic partners, we're also sort of picking out and selecting aspects of our parents, right? Aspects of our parents, whether we're doing it consciously or subconsciously, kind of really depends on you and where you're at. But, normally when we find ourselves in, especially, I can speak for myself, being somebody who's been in a lot of who's had difficult romantic relationships, right? And that a lot of the times the issues that I'm pulling apart and pulling out, right? These swords don't just represent the swords that I'm experiencing with, the partner, the person right in front of me, but I'm also dealing with swords from the past that come from my own experiences with my own father, that come from my own experiences with men growing up, and, what heartbreak has left over that I seem to repeat, right? Like, what are the patterns? What the sixth house to me very much also represents patterns that relate to my health, not just my physical health, but also my mental and my emotional health, right? So what are the patterns that I tend to engage in that continue to recreate this pain and this heartbreak? And this pain and heartbreak, once again, 9 times out of 10 has very little to do with the actual person, but more so has to do with what this person represents in terms of like my own father figure, right? And especially for me, like my Saturn is in Capricorn. And so there are some tough lessons that I've had to learn, not only with, 10th house Capricorn issues of career and my identity in terms of my career and what it is that what I want to do and how I want to project and what I want to project into the world, but also like how I relate to, my own relationship with my father. Like, what does that look like? And so these swords oftentimes have very little to do, like I said before, with the situation in front of us, but and yes, have to do with the situation in front of us, but also have to do with the past, right? And like what comes up when things trigger us or remind us of difficulties from the past, right? And so, And the Hierophant here, again, it's like, what are the patterns? Like, what lands you here, right? How does this person showing up in your life? How is this King of Wands, this person that shows up in your life who has this clenched fist and, requires the best and asks, and it's almost like, I don't know, like if you can even see how I read a lot by looking at the images and the pictures, and especially with the court cards, looking at the expressions and looking at which way are they facing? Are they looking at each other? What's going on? Are they looking away? And so they're looking towards each other. But it's like this Queen of Wands has this very soft gaze towards the king. Meanwhile, the king has this very kind of clenched fist, brute face, resting bitch face, whatever you call it, kind of look at this queen, as if like he's getting ready to tell her, like, you aren't doing enough. That's just what I'm sensing and what I'm feeling when I look at the dynamic between these two, is that she's chill back and she's laid back and she's secure in her power. Meanwhile, this King of Wands is like not feeling so secure or is feeling power hungry, and in essence feels this need to kind of, I don't know, mad dog this queen almost. Like he's not pleased with what she's doing or what she's, with what she has to offer. But yeah, like what are the patterns that recreate this suffering for you? And like the heart, right? Like not just the proverbial heart, right? Like the heart that is broken, but like your own heart, like your health, like your physical, the muscle that pumps blood to all, of the areas of your body that require blood. Like what, not just the metaphorical heart that gets broken or the heart chakra or the heart center, but like your actual physical heart. Like what patterns tire you out and rob you of your energy. These swords, right? Like these swords represent thought and our way of thinking about things and rumination and how we mentally process things. So what is it, like what's happening in the thought process for you, Virgo, that is not only hurting you metaphorically in your heart, but also physically? Like, is there a heart attack? Is there heart disease? Are there heart problems, heart palpitations that you're dealing with as a result, right, of sort of not confronting this overbearing kind of energy that is never satisfied, is never pleased? And once again, this energy can be somebody that's actually manifesting right in front of you physically, or it can represent the father. It can represent your own relationship, to how, what was the dynamic between you and a father figure that then instilled a very, a way of doing things that was hell-bent on perfection, hell-bent on pleasing everybody, hell-bent on self-sacrifice, right? Like, how are you boxed in? How are you boxed into a way of doing something, and a way of navigating the world that is really about, pleasing, right? Like whatever this figure might represent for you, right? Like the Hierophant does represent, normatives in society, a set way of doing things, patterns or traditions that maybe work or don't work, right? Like patriarchy as a pattern doesn't really work for me personally anymore. I don't know how everybody else feels about that, right? But like, white supremacy as a pattern, right? Or as a quote unquote tradition doesn't really work for me. So how can we turn this up on its head? But with the Hierophant being that figure that institution of tradition and the things that we hold true to be true, the things that we hold to be real, the things like the traditions that kind of go unchallenged, essentially. Like, nobody's gonna challenge this Pope. Nobody challenges him, right? It's just there are certain ways and certain things of doing, there are certain ways of being in our lives that we've just come to put up on this pedestal, that we've come to sit up on this throne, right? And then meanwhile, here we are, not recognizing our own power and not even daring to even challenge what sits up here. Like, none of these two figures, they're not going to ask this Hierophant or this Pope or like, hey, how did you get there? Can you, like, what are your beliefs? Like, why do you believe that? What's this system that you're asking all of us to believe in too? Like, they're not going to ask that, right? And we do that metaphorically in our lives with certain behaviors and patterns that we engage in, right? Like, we become so complacent in, in this energy and just getting used to suffering. We get so used to it that we almost kind of put like the red in this hot, like in this guy's regalia, in his garb, right? And the red in this heart, it's like, I can't help but almost kind of feel like they're one and the same, right? Like they're attached to one another, and that's why they came up together, right? That we almost put suffering on this pedestal. Oh, I'm supposed to suffer. And yes, yeah, there's suffering. Like, we have to learn lessons. Saturn doles out our karma, and Chiron, forces us to find healing where we are wounded, right? So the wounded healer, right? So there is aspects of our lives where we do need to endure. We do need to experience this so that we can be grateful for this and for this, right? But it's like, are you done putting this suffering? Like, does this heart with 3 swords in it really deserve that much praise and worship? Are you worshiping suffering? Like, is there a worshiping of this, and like I said before, both of my parents are Virgos, and my stepfather, he's on the cusp of Leo and Virgo. So, and when we got Leo going on, there's like a softening of the edges. We've got more of this going on, right? But still, in both of my parents, there is this very deep sense of self-sacrifice that they have both done in the name of our family, right? And that's what parents do, or that's what parents, should do. I don't want to say should or would or could, right? Like, I don't want to, use that language, but there is, when you have children, you have a family, there is a level of sacrifice that happens, right? Like, it's not about doing what I want to do anymore. I have a family. There are needs that need to get met. But I witnessed them take it to like a level where it was like, wow, like it gave me an example of family and being a parent that was like, wow, this is a lot. But then also recognizing like, oh, but they're both Virgos. So like they're kind of more inclined to engage in the, more of the self-sacrificing side of things, right? And me being an Aquarius, and having a lot of the humanitarian aspects of the Aquarian archetype within me, right? Like, I understand that, but it's different. Like, the self-sacrificing of a Virgo versus that of an Aquarius are very different kind of, an Aquarius, sometimes won't get attached enough to end up feeling like this, in a group level, right? Whereas a Virgo will go here. So, stop putting suffering on the pedestal. Pull one of those swords out. Look at it. Look at that sword. Look at that sword. Observe it. Look at it. Pull one of these swords out. Just pull one out. Pull one out. I would suggest that you pull the one out that relates to where did you get this idea in the first place that you have to suffer in this way? Where does that suffering come from? Does it come from a father figure or a strong male figure? Does it come from your mother figure? Does it come from a current relationship where, you're not like these two, yes, they're of the same suit. They're of the same suit, but it's then followed by this broken heart, right? So, pull one of those swords out and figure out where it comes from. Look at it. Where does this sword come from? How did it end up there? And how long has it been there? And if it's been there for a long time, to the point where you've allowed it to sit on this fucking throne, pull it out, look at it for what it really is. Because the Hermit, which is you guys, right? At least in my interpretation of it, I believe the Hermit is the Virgo card. Correct me if I'm wrong, or leave a comment below saying that I'm right. One or the other. So, the Hermit seeks out the truth. The Hermit seeks to break down, right? These types of energies, the Hermit wants to break this down. The Hermit, notice the Hermit is incredibly humble. The Hermit, and it's the irony, right, is that Virgos are so humble, right? So simply dressed, just, not based on material need or possession of things, right? So humble. But at the same time, you dress up your pain and your suffering in such a way that makes it look so, grandiose and necessary, and it's really not. It's just it's just a heart with 3 fucking swords in it, right? Pull one out, take a look at it, really observe it. And at first, initially, right, the Hermit card is not, the Hermit's not on an easy journey. There's snow on the ground, it's cold, it's dark. The Hermit's by himself, right? The Hermit is dressed in this very humble sort of robe, and he's holding this lantern, this single lantern, in this cold weather, right? So the initial journey that the Hermit takes is not an easy one. It's not, it's not easy. It's not warm and playful and fun. It's a very serious, introspective look at where does this sword come from. And I have a feeling that you'll figure it out and you'll transform from looking at it, in this very bleak kind of, serious, once again, the seriousness, right? And it will shift into this very kind of lighthearted, that's all that is. This sword is actually a really beautiful and valuable lesson. And this sword, right, that I've pulled out from this heart has actually added, is a part of who I am, and has made me who I am, and has made me the strong, sturdy earth sign that I am, right? Has made me the strong and stable earth sign. It's part of who I am, and it's added to my value. It's added to the lessons that I've had to learn, and it's added to the value of who I am as a person, right? If I didn't have to walk through half of what I've had to walk through, I wouldn't be able to then help people in the way that I do, right? So seeing value, how can we transform? How can you become the alchemist this month and transform this sword into this pentacle, right? How can you transform this really awful pattern or way of doing things or way of believing in things? How can we transform that? And it's still a very humble way, right? Because this page is still very humble. But how can we transform that sword into this pentacle, which is something that I can then actually take and use in the physical world? How can I transmute this air energy into something that can be used physically for the betterment of myself and for others? How do I maintain that balance, right? And the Fool showing up at the end of the reading. I definitely see this, and again, with the solar eclipse coming, right? We have the sun here, and the sun representing new beginnings, new journeys, new understandings. And with this, oh God, y'all, so the solar eclipse is happening in your 12th house. It's happening in the house that rules our subconscious, that rules, the intangible that rules, what we cannot see, like the thoughts and the things that pass throughout the day that we cannot see, right? And I definitely see this representing a new journey, a new beginning into how you relate to yourself mentally and psychologically, right? This King of Swords is in absolute control of his psychological state. He is in absolute control of his mental capacity and his ability to communicate whatever comes through consciously to his mental capacity, right? But he's also very much in control of his psychological state, meaning that he has a very clear understanding of where things are at for him, consciously and subconsciously, right? He's in control of that. He doesn't allow himself to be thrown into, a place where his thoughts and his ruminating ideas or his ruminating mind will never dethrone him. Like, he's always going to sit here. He's always going to be in absolute control of what he thinks and what he feels as a result of his thoughts, right? And so this Fool card, right, representing on August 21st that solar eclipse happening in your 12th house, this new beginning, this new idea that I don't have to suffer. I can actually very much be in control, right? Virgos, y'all want to be in control your mind. It's very hard. It's not an easy thing to do, but this King of Swords is an absolute command of his mental facilities, So can I get an outcome? But still, try to incorporate this lightheartedness, right? Like, these two energies still can kind of also represent two different outlooks, right? I would definitely say, remember the Fool, and this Fool walks in absolute blind faith and belief that everything will be okay, because Source, God, the universe is looking out, right? And as you move into that 12th house activity happening on the 21st with the solar eclipse, really ask yourself, where do I have faith and belief that things will be okay? Or do I only stick to the belief that I have the capacity, like, do I have faith and belief that things will turn out? Or do I only believe that I have to be in absolute power and control of everything in order for everything to work out the way that it needs to work out, right? So balancing these two energies out as well. Where do you have faith? Where are you lacking faith? So let's do an outcome card for Virgo for August 2017. Outcome card for Virgo. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Ooh, here we go. Okay, so 2 came out. So we got 2 fours here. So we have the 4 of Cups. And we have the 4 of Wands. So the 4 of Cups. Don't be afraid to take the offer. Don't be afraid to... I'm reading this not so much as boredom, but more so as fear of not wanting to experience, right? Like, sometimes when we go through something like this, we can end up in a place like this, where we're even though we're alone and we're like, I'm alone, I'm cool, I'm single, I'm chilling, I'm not engaging, I'm not dating, my Tinder app has been deleted off my phone, like, I'm not doing, like, when you're sitting here with your arms crossed, like, nope, I'm not, I'm cool, I'm chilling, right? We still can't help to reflect, possibly, sorry, I just got a text message. We still can't help to possibly reflect. Like, even though we're single, right, and we're alone, we're like, yeah, but, like, that shit really hurt. That, what you're gazing at, that really hurt. And in the meantime, the universe is trying to offer you something new. And it doesn't have to be a relationship. It could be a new job. It could, once again, relate to, like, your, now that you've pulled out one of these swords, or you've been able to kind of walk on this new journey, right? That there could be this reversion or this reverting back to feeling like, stubborn in a sense, feeling stubborn to allow yourself to just feel the stability and the joy, right? Like, just be in the moment. Get out of the mind, and just be in the physical moment. Be in the physical moment with those that love you. Recognize the stability that you do have. Recognize what you have in your life that is working and that is very beautiful and that brings stability to you, right? And be mindful of stepping into this energy where we kind of get like a little salty about things. You know what I mean? We kind of get like a little salty about like how things in the past may have worked out. And then in that saltiness, we forget that, oh, but there's so much more that the world has to offer me. There's so much stability and joy and celebration that the world has to offer me. And I do see this cup, right, as being very much in relationship to, well, this is what this is what the cup is trying to bring in, right? So, and Virgo, some of y'all can be a little bit stubborn sometimes. And you're right? Like you're right. You're totally 100% right. That was shitty. That was not nice. That was a real, bad thing that happened to you. But don't forget that there's like the universe, right? Like faith and belief, that 12th house, Pisces, absolute faith and belief that the universe will just poof and bring you what it is that you actually want and need and desire, right, in your life. So here's your spread again. Everything that kind of came out for you all. And I think this was a great reading for you all. Very quick to the point. If you consider 40 minutes quick and to the point. But I hope you have a good month, Virgos, and I will see you in September and your birthday month. And if you want a reading from me, you can contact me at tattoosandtarot@gmail.com. Or you can go to my website, which is tattoosandtarot.com. You can go to the reading section, and I will put all of that above in the card section and below in the description box. So I'll see you all in September, and have a good month. All right, bye, Virgos.